Hello everyone, my name is Abdurrahman Hafiz and today I would like to talk to you about middlewares in Express. So, generally speaking, in computer science, a middleware is some code or some logic that runs between two different things. These two things in Express are the request and the response. So, whenever we make a request using either Postman or maybe our front end application, it doesn't matter as long as the request is being sent to an Express application. What we can do is that we can define one or many or zero middlewares, right? So the request comes and it's first processed by our first middleware, and this middleware, like this piece of code, it can do one of two things. It can either continue to the next middleware after doing its work, so it does like some logging, some validation, and it says, hey, we are gonna go to the next middleware, or it can stop the request execution here and decide I'm gonna send a response directly. So this is also something else that middlewares can do. They don't have to process all of the middlewares, right? We'll see this in more details. Sorry for zooming in like that. And yeah, for this we are gonna build an Express application. Here I have a very simple package.json. I just have Express and this is the types for it. You don't need to worry about that now, but we also have this joy library. Okay, and this joy library is a library for validation. I will explain in a minute why we need this. So let's start with building something fun. Let's build a cats API. Okay, so I'm gonna import Express here using require Express, and my app is I execute Express, and we want to listen, and typically we listen to port 3000. Console.log server is running on port 3000. Okay, just typical Express app, and I'm gonna run that using nodemon instead of node, so that I don't have to restart my application every time I make a change. And here we have this. Okay, for this we're gonna have two endpoints. One is to create a cat, and for that I'm gonna use REST. So I'm gonna use here post to create a cat and put to update a cat, and here I'm gonna provide the ID. And you know, the normal stuff, we have a request and response objects, and for now I'm just gonna return just a cat ID 123, and we're gonna do the same thing here. Res the JSON cat ID 23. Okay, format document to look a little bit nicer. Right. So whenever we want to create a cat, we have to provide some information. So let's try to actually call this and make sure it's working now. I'm gonna use Postman for this. I'm gonna post localhost 3000 cats. Okay, that's fine. I'm receiving the response I defined here. Now let's try to send some data. So we send the data in the body, row, and JSON. I'm gonna send name is kitty, color is orange, and we have age. I'm gonna say 11. Okay, or maybe 12 because I like the number 12. So send. Okay, this is still working. Now let's actually try to log this body here. So I'm gonna do console.log request.body. This is a property in Express. But if I try to send this request and see the output, I get here undefined. Why is that? That is because Express by default does not parse this body. That JSON body, it doesn't know how to read it, right? So for that, I'm gonna add a little bit of some magic here, and I'm gonna explain that later in the video. So here we use app.use express.json. This is basically telling Express, hey, you know what, you should, in all your endpoints, you should learn how to read a body, a JSON body. And then I save this. Now let's send. And if I look here again, we now have this body written properly, and let's just for testing change this to 11, and yes, this is changing, this is working properly. Okay, This is actually a form of middleware that I'll explain in the end of the video. But what is a middleware? So, as I said before, it's a piece of code that runs between two things. So this is my main handler, right? This is the final handler I have. I can add some other pieces of logic. So for example, I can add a logger for all the requests that come for our cats API. So here I can define another middleware. Hey, it takes just the request and response, right? And then I want to say console.log cat name is cat.name or request.body.name, and I can say here cat age is age, and also color is color. Okay, format document. Let's format this to be a little bit clearer what the parameters are. So this app.post takes the cat, the first middleware, and this final handler. Okay, so if we try to write, if we actually try to execute this, you see here this hangs here forever. Why is that? That is because this piece of code executed, but it didn't pass the logic to the next handler, right? So middlewares have a special property, it's called next, and in order to say, hey, like this is done, this middleware work is done, now execute the next one. Okay, so here I already canceled. Okay, so now what should happen is that this should log these data and then next, and when we execute this next, this one starts. Okay, so let's try again. And okay, here we have this cat ID stuff, and we can see here that we are getting all of the outputs, right? So the cat name is Kitty, cat color is orange, and cat age is 11. Okay, okay. Now you might think, hey, why do I need this? Like, why do I need to write it into different functions, right? So what we can do is just we can just cut this, put it here, get rid of this, and this in this context, it's the same exact thing. It does exactly the same thing. We can even try, right? So why would we do it? So the reason we would do it is, well, there are multiple reasons. One of which is reusability. So what we can do here is that instead of having this defined right here, we can define it as a function. So let's say function log cat data, takes request, response, and next, and this is the function body, and log cat data here, right? Now what this means is that we can reuse this logger and use it for this update one API, update cat API as well, right? So I can go here, I should get the same output, right? Perfect. Now I can reuse this, put it here, and if I call the put, the ID is 1 to 3, doesn't matter. I'm also getting the logs here. Okay, so this is one reason. Another reason is that now you can have middlewares written by other people. You just need to import it and add it here, and it will do some logic. You don't care how it does it, but you need it, right? So this is another value of that. Okay, but seriously though, logging, this doesn't seem real. I don't think I need to do this ever, right? So at least in this way. Let's actually build a valid or like a real world middleware. So here you notice that we have this cat schema, right? We have a name, a color, an age, but what can happen is that some user who is malicious, you know, someone wants to mess with our backend application, someone is trying to hack our application, they can, you know, just instead of passing age as a number, they can say, I'm a cat. How would you make sure that a user always passes the right information? So for this, we can use a validation library, right? So there are so many validation libraries out there. There is a library called Zod, there is one called Joy, there is one called Express Validator. You can use any of them and they will do the same thing. Some are better than others, but this is not the purpose of this video. For this video, I would like to use Joy, okay? Joy is a schema validator, right? So what we can do here is we can define a cat schema, and the cat schema is an object. So this is the way we define a schema in Joy. We say it's an object, and this object has a name, right, which is a string, and I want to say it has minimum of 2 characters, and it is required. Age is an integer, number, integer, and I want to say it's minimum 0 and maximum 30, and I also want it to be required. And for the sake of this video, I want to say the color is optional. It's a string. It is the valid values for it. I want to say, okay, you can't pass any string. You need to pass like this list of colors, and I'm colorblind. I don't know much colors or many colors. So it's white, black, orange, brown. Okay, right. And here I can say that this is optional. Okay. So I format this. Maybe we can make it a little bit nicer for readability. Yeah. Now format document. Okay, so this is the cat schema. Now, how would I use this? How is this related to middlewares, right? So right now we didn't do anything with this cat schema yet. We just defined it. I'm gonna cut it. So right now, if I pass a cat without a name, doesn't work. Why? Look, cat data is not defined. Yes, it's complaining about this, which is missing, so we can remove it for now. And our server is running again. Okay. So now this request works, but it doesn't have a name anymore. So if we were still to have our log cat data, it would log undefined. Let's actually show you that before all of the good stuff. Yeah. So right now, let's save this. And this works, but if you look at the logs here, cat name is undefined. Now I don't want that. This is not good. I want to make it so that if someone tries to call my API with invalid information, like this name here is missing, so I consider this invalid and I should stop execution completely, right? So let's bring everything back. Okay, so this is the cat schema. So we need to like validate the information that we're receiving, right? Yeah, this is the one. This is the case we want. Okay, so what we can do is that we can write another function like a middleware that's called validate cat schema or validate cat data. You know, again, it takes request, response, and next. Let's not forget this. And before I forget, I want to call next right away. You know, in the end. And I want to validate the schema. Yeah, I want to validate the data that I have. So we have the cat information in request loop body. So what we can do is we say cat schema dot validate request loop body. So these two should match, right? And validation result is equal to this. And this validation result has one of two values. Validation result dot error. Right, and if there is an error, I want to do something with this error. I want to stop the execution, right? So res return res dot status 400. This status 400 says that you are making a bad request. You should try to use a valid data, and to tell them what exactly went wrong, to tell the user what exactly went wrong, we can use this data. It has this details, error the details. Okay, so now let's actually try this, but first we need to use the middleware. So right now we wrote the middleware, but we're not using it anywhere. So here I'm gonna pass this just as the second parameter after /cats, after the path for my API. I'm just gonna write this here. Okay, now let's try to call it with valid information, and it's not working. Why? Method no longer accepts array arguments. Okay, yeah, this this doesn't accept an array. It should be like multiple strings here. Now let's try again. Look at that, it's not defined. Yes, we should remove this again from my document. Okay, it's happy now. Let's try to call it with valid information. We are getting the response back. It's saying that, hey, things are working fine. Now let's try to actually make an invalid request. So this name, let's say it's missing. And it's still working. And that's because we are calling the update one. And this update one doesn't have any validation. We only have validation on the post, right? The creation. So actually, let's add the validation here as well. And boom. Okay, here we are getting an error. And the message is saying name is required, and it's saying, hey, the path is name. Yeah, we can also customize messages here to be more human readable, but this is out of the scope for this video. Okay, so this is a valid use case. What are some other use cases that we have for middlewares? We can do things like well, logging. So we get a log on each request that is made, like says, hey, this request was made at this particular time. Or we can do validation, is very common use case. We could do also authentication and authorization in node.js. Let me fold all here. Okay, yeah. So there are really many use cases for middlewares. What I would like to talk to you about next is the levels of middleware. So far we've seen this validate cat data, and it's written directly in here, right? So what happens if I want to run a middleware everywhere in my application, in my Express application? I can't speak properly. So what we can do is that we can use app.use, and this will run this middleware on all of our endpoints. So here, request, response, and next, of course. And I want to call next first things and say, hey, console.log request has been made to, and request of method, and I want to make it uppercase, and request.path, and I want to say new date to as a friend. We'll see how this looks like right now. So this is just a way to see a log of all the requests that are made, right? With the method and the path and the time it was made in. Okay. Just by adding this app.use on the app level, this middleware runs in all of our endpoints, right? So let's try this. Okay, this is invalid. Let's make it valid. And here, yeah, a request has been made to pot/cats and in this particular time, right? So let's try another level. So is this the only level? No, there is also on the router level. If you've used app.router or express.router, yes, router. So you could also use router.use and also define a middleware the same way. Yeah, and I promised you that we will see this express.json. This is exactly what this is. So we are saying here in all of our endpoints, I expect you to check if there is a body, and if there is a body, a JSON body, then parse it so that it is available as a request.body, as we've seen in the beginning of the video. This is an example of like an application global middleware. You could also use it as a router middleware on a particular endpoint. There are many levels we can apply this on. I think this covers everything about middlewares. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you now understand middlewares a little bit more, and see you around. Bye bye.